There is a strange belief in the world of classical music, a belief that sounds like a legend yet follows real composers. It is called the curse of the Ninth Symphony. Since the time of Beethoven, many composers who completed a Ninth Symphony never lived to finish a 10th. Coincidence? Or something darker? Today, we enter this mystery, where music meets fate. The curse of the Ninth Symphony is a superstition suggesting that, beginning with Beethoven, any composer who writes a Ninth Symphony dies shortly afterward, never managing to complete a 10th. It is believed that the idea of the curse of the Ninth Symphony was first articulated by Arnold Schoenberg, who attributed the origin of this superstition to Gustav Mahler. According to Schoenberg, Mahler had two precedents in mind. The first was Beethoven himself, who died while working on his 10th Symphony. The second was Anton Bruckner, who, in his later years, was composing his Ninth Symphony, the finale of which apparently remained unfinished. In essence, however, this symphony could be considered his 10th, because Bruckner had previously rejected one of his symphonies, marking it with the symbol null instead of a number. This work is now known as Bruckner's Null Symphony. Strictly speaking, Bruckner had written yet another symphony earlier, but he himself regarded it as a student exercise. Bruckner consciously oriented his work toward Beethoven, and when beginning his Ninth Symphony, deliberately chose the same key as Beethoven's Ninth. Mahler, according to Schoenberg, perceived a mystical pattern in all this and attempted to circumvent it by giving the subtitle symphony to his work The Song of the Earth, which is essentially a 6-movement vocal cycle for 2 voices and orchestra. After that, he completed his Ninth Symphony and died while working on his 10th. It is noteworthy that Beethoven, too, had an unnumbered choral symphony. Those who have written their ninth come too close to the other world, Schoenberg remarked in his memorial speech for Mahler on October 12, 1912. Later, the list of composers supposedly affected by the curse of the Ninth Symphony came to include Franz Schubert and Anton Dvořák. Today, Schubert is generally considered to have written 9 symphonies, although 2 of them were left unfinished. The so-called unfinished symphony consists of 2 completed movements and a sketch of a third. The symphony in E major was fully composed but never orchestrated. Dvořák owed exactly 9 symphonies, but the first was neither performed nor published during his lifetime. Moreover, Dvořák himself believed the manuscript to be irretrievably lost. It is fairly evident, however, that neither Mahler nor Schoenberg had these composers in mind. In modern discussions of the curse of the Ninth Symphony, numerous 20th century composers are cited whose symphonic output ended with a Ninth Symphony. Among the most notable are Ralph Vaughan Williams, Malcolm Arnold, Kurt Atterberg, Roger Sessions, and Egon Welesh. Alexander Glazunov began work on his Ninth Symphony in the late 1900s, but abandoned it after completing the first movement and never returned to the project, despite living another 25 years. The Ninth Symphony was also the last for Alfred Schnittke, who composed it shortly before his death. Furthermore, Nikolai Korndorff, who undertook the reconstruction of the work at the request of Schnittke's widow, died during the process. This version was later completed by Alexander Raskotov and performed under the direction of Dennis Russell Davies. There also exists an earlier and substantially different reconstruction by Gennady Rozdestvensky. Dmitri Shostakovich, when beginning work on his Ninth Symphony, was aware of these historical precedents. After it, he went on to compose 6 more symphonies. However, according to musicologist Solomon Volkov, the curse nevertheless caught up with Shostakovich. The ironic tone of the Ninth Symphony provoked Stalin's sharp disapproval, which was followed by serious troubles in Shostakovich's life and career at the turn of the 1940s and 1950s. Of course, the 20th century also produced many composers who wrote more than 9 symphonies. Among them are Hans Werner Henze and Eduard Tubin, David Diamond and Edmund Rubra, Heiter Villa-Lobos and Darius Milhaud, Henry Cowell and Alan Pedersen, Mieczysław Weinberg, Nikolai Myaskovsky, and Alan Hovhannes. Nikita Boguslavsky titled his 8th Symphony, written in the 1980s, The Last. The composer claimed that he had said everything he wished to say in the symphonic genre. Yet many believe that he was simply afraid to write a 9th Symphony after the story of Beethoven. However, after his 8th Symphony, Boguslavsky also withdrew from songwriting, despite living another 20 years. Some composers feared the number. Some tried to escape it. Others ignored it completely. And yet, again and again, the Ninth Symphony became a final statement, a farewell written in sound. Is the curse real? Or is it only a reflection of how closely great music stands to the edge of life itself? Perhaps the truth is not in the number, but in how much of the soul a composer gives away.